Hello and welcome. You're about to read a special retelling of Peter Pan by J. M. Barrie, a simplified and shortened version of the original story, written in easy English to help you learn. Read it out loud, repeat after the audio, and copy the rhythm and tone. This is called the shadowing method, and it's a fun, powerful way to improve your English. Now, let's fly to Neverland. Chapter 1, Peter breaks through. All children, except one, grow up. They all know that they will grow up someday. The day when they know it was when they turned 2 years old. That's how Wendy found out. One day, she was 2. She picked a flower in the garden and proudly gave it to her mother. Her mother held her heart and said, "Oh, I wish you could stay little forever." After that, Wendy knew she must grow up. That is how a child knows, at age 2, the beginning of growing up. Wendy's home was number 14, on a quiet street in London. Before Wendy, her mother and father were happy just by themselves. Her mother was romantic. She liked stories and dreams, and she had a sweet, teasing smile. Her husband, Mr. Darling, was proud of his wife. He said she loved him and respected him because he understood stocks and shares. Even if he didn't, he sounded sure when he said it. Mrs. Darling married in a white dress. She was good at keeping the house tidy at first. She counted every vegetable when she cooked. But soon, the vegetables disappeared and drawings of babies appeared instead. That was Wendy's mother when she had time to think about her children. Wendy was the oldest. Then came John, then Michael. They were 3 happy children. They had a nanny, Nana, a nursemaid who was really a dog. A sweet, well-trained Newfoundland dog. One night, Mr. Darling had to tie Nana outside because she would not stop barking. He felt sad about it. Wendy listened at the nursery window. "Nana's bark is different," she said softly. "This is her danger bark." Mr. and Mrs. Darling went to bed quietly while Nana barked under the window. They knew something was happening. And something was happening. Suddenly, a tiny bright light, faster than blinking, came into the room. It was Tinker Bell. She was looking for Peter Pan's shadow. She checked drawers and clothes, but Peter's shadow was gone. Without thinking, Peter dove into the drawers and scattered everything. Then he found his shadow. In his excitement, he slammed the drawer and trapped Tinker Bell inside it. In the chaos, Peter forgot all about Wendy and her brothers. Tinker Bell was stuck, and Peter forgot her because he was so happy to have his shadow back. He said he would fix things later. That night, Peter did many things. He talked about magical things, mermaids, pirates, forests, and happy homes. But the biggest adventure had not started yet. Inside the Darling home, Mrs. Darling was worried. She got up and walked to the nursery. The room was empty. She said, "Oh, darling children, where are you? Nana, where are they?" Nana tried to comfort her, but the children were gone. Outside, in a London street, there was a dog kennel. Inside, Mr. Darling sat sadly. He had to stay there until the children came back. He did this to show how much he missed them. People in the street saw him, some laughed, some cheered. He became known as the man in the kennel. He even went to dinners in his kennel. Back in the nursery, Mrs. Darling sat waiting. She was tired, sad, and dreaming. Suddenly, she heard the kennel bring Mr. Darling home. She woke up with a start and called, "My dear children, please come home." Nana stayed with her, calm and sad. At that moment, the kennel stopped outside. Mr. Darling got out, kissed his wife, and helped her into the kennel for comfort. They walked inside together. Inside, the children were far away. Peter Pan had flown to Neverland with Wendy, John, and Michael. He brought them to his world, the island of dreams. There were forests, caves, mermaids, and a pirate ship. They were free to fly and to live only for fun. But there would be dangers. They would meet sirens, mermaids, pirates, and Captain Hook, a bad man with a hook for a hand. Still, for that moment, it was wild magic. Wendy thought she had a lovely frock of leaves and berries, but it became quite short as she grew. Peter did not notice. He spoke only of new adventures. Something told Wendy, growing up was quick even here. That was Wendy's first night in Neverland. She lay in a small house Peter built for her and her brothers. The moonlight was soft. Soon, she fell asleep dreaming of home. Peter whispered, "Magic is here. Stay with me." They slept. In the far distance, pirate ships rocked on the sea. Hook's laugh could be heard in the wind. But for now, Neverland was beautiful. Chapter 2, The Shadow. Peter Pan was not like other boys. He never wanted to grow up. He lived in Neverland, a place full of fun and danger. There were fairies, mermaids, wild animals, pirates, and lost boys. The lost boys were boys who had fallen out of their baby carriages when their nurses looked the other way. If no one came to claim them, they were sent to Neverland. Peter was their leader. He had lived in Neverland for a very long time. He didn't remember his parents. He didn't want to. To forget is an adventure, he would say. Peter often flew to London at night, looking for stories. He listened at windows to hear mothers telling tales. That's how he found the darling children. He liked their mothers' stories, especially the ones about him. Wendy knew a lot about Peter Pan. But one night, when Peter was listening, he was seen. Nana barked, and Peter flew off quickly. He left his shadow behind. That's why he came back. He wanted his shadow. Wendy woke up when Peter was trying to reattach his shadow with soap. She sat up and asked, "Boy, why are you crying?" Peter said, "I can't stick my shadow back on." Wendy laughed kindly. "You can't stick it on with soap. Let me sew it on." So she did. She took a needle and thread and carefully sewed his shadow back to his feet. When she finished, Peter jumped up and said proudly, "I did it myself." Wendy laughed again. "Oh, you are so silly. But I think you are wonderful." Peter liked the way she spoke to him. He told her about Neverland, about pirates and fairies and the lost boys. He said the lost boys had no mother and no one to tell them stories. Wendy said, "That's very sad. Boys need mothers." Peter had an idea. "You could come with me to Neverland and be their mother." Wendy was surprised. "Take me with you?" "Yes," Peter said. "You can fly. I'll teach you. You and your brothers." Wendy woke John and Michael. Peter gave them a little fairy dust and told them to think happy thoughts. Happy thoughts are what make you fly. John thought of winning a race. Michael thought of chocolate pudding. Wendy thought of her mother's kisses. Soon, they were all floating in the air. They flew out of the nursery window. Past stars and clouds they flew, across the sky, toward Neverland. The journey was long. They flew for many days and nights. They saw strange things, flying fish, moons that sang, birds that spoke. Peter flew ahead, happy and wild. The children followed, holding hands when they felt afraid. At last, they saw Neverland in the distance. It looked like a magic map, with forests, rivers, mountains, and smoke from pirate ships. As they flew lower, they saw mermaids in the lagoons, wolves in the woods, and the red skins of the native tribe. But not everyone was glad to see them. Captain Hook, the pirate, saw them from his ship. Hook was tall, thin, and cruel. He had a long black mustache and a cold, wicked look. Long ago, Peter had cut off Hook's hand and thrown it to a crocodile. Now the crocodile followed Hook everywhere, hoping for more. The crocodile made a ticking sound, like a clock. When Hook heard ticking, he ran. Hook hated Peter Pan. "This time," he said, "I will win." Hook aimed a cannon at the sky and fired. Boom! The children screamed and tumbled through the air. Peter grabbed Wendy's hand. Down, to the trees. They flew fast to the forest. There, Peter had a secret home underground. The lost boys lived there. They wore animal skins and played all day. They were brave, silly, and very loyal to Peter. When Peter arrived with Wendy and her brothers, the lost boys cheered. Peter said, "This is Wendy. She will be your new mother." The boys clapped with joy. They had never had a mother. Wendy smiled and said, "I'll tell you stories and take care of you." She kissed them all on the forehead. Peter built a small house for Wendy out of sticks, leaves, and mushrooms. It looked like a tiny cottage. Inside, Wendy sang lullabies, cleaned the boys' clothes, and told bedtime stories. Peter sat close, pretending not to care, but he listened to every word. The boys were happy. Wendy made them feel safe. John and Michael felt brave. Peter felt proud. But Hook was planning his next move. He wanted revenge. He walked the island with his pirates. He said, "We'll catch them. We'll capture Wendy." That night, the moon was full. In the Lost Boys' home, everyone was asleep. Only Peter sat awake, watching over them all. He whispered, "I'll protect you, Wendy. I won't let Hook win." And so, the adventure truly began. Wendy was not afraid when she saw Peter. She had seen him before, in her dreams. But now he was real. A boy, not much older than herself, standing in the nursery. He was trying to catch his shadow, which had slipped away from him. Peter had found his shadow in the drawer. He tried to attach it by rubbing soap on his feet, but it didn't work. He sat down on the floor and cried. That was when Wendy woke up. She sat up in bed and looked at him kindly. "Boy, why are you crying?" she asked. Peter looked up, surprised someone was speaking to him. "I can't get my shadow to stick. I tried everything." Wendy giggled softly. You can't stick it with soap. That's silly. Shadows don't work that way. Peter looked embarrassed. I thought it would work. I can sew it on, said Wendy gently. I'll do it for you. She got her sewing basket and thread and knelt beside him. Peter let her sew the shadow to his feet. He didn't say thank you, but he looked very pleased with himself when it was done. There, Wendy said. It's as good as new. Peter jumped up and danced around. I did it. I have my shadow again. You're welcome, Wendy said, smiling. Peter looked at her. You know, you're very nice. What's your name? I'm Wendy Moira Angela Darling. And you? I'm Peter Pan. Wendy's eyes lit up. Peter Pan, the Peter Pan from the stories. Peter nodded proudly. The very same. Oh, I know all about you. You live in Neverland. You fight pirates and talk to fairies. Peter smiled. Yes. I came to listen to your mother's stories. I like them. That's how I lost my shadow. I'm glad you came back. Peter sat on the edge of her bed. I live with the lost boys. They don't have a mother. They don't know any stories. Would you like to come with me and be our mother? Wendy blinked. You want me to go to Neverland? Yes. You can bring your brothers. You'll love it there. You can tell us stories and tuck us in at night. Wendy was excited. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Let me wake John and Michael. Peter flew to the ceiling while Wendy woke her brothers. John was the second child. He wore glasses and liked to act very grown-up. Michael was the youngest. He still slept with a teddy bear. John, Michael, wake up. Wendy whispered. Peter Pan is here. The boys sat up, rubbing their eyes. Peter Pan? Asked John. Really? Peter floated down. Hello. Michael gasped. You can fly. Of course, Peter said. And you can too. I'll teach you. Peter clapped his hands, and Tinker Bell flew out of the drawer. She was a tiny fairy with a light that sparkled like a star. She was angry from being trapped so long. Tink, be nice, Peter said. These are my friends. Tinker Bell rang like a little bell. She didn't like Wendy. She was jealous. Peter sprinkled fairy dust over the children. Now, he said, think happy thoughts. That's how you fly. What kind of thoughts? John asked. Fun ones, said Peter. Like birthdays or Christmas or chocolate cake. Wendy thought of her mother's kisses. John thought of riding a horse. Michael thought of his teddy bear dancing. They rose into the air, slowly at first, then faster. The room filled with laughter as they floated around like balloons. Come on, Peter called. To Neverland. They flew out the nursery window and into the night. Below them, the streets of London were quiet. The stars above were bright. The children followed Peter through clouds and moonlight, over rivers and mountains. It was like flying in a dream. How far is Neverland? Asked Michael. It's the second star to the right and straight on till morning, Peter answered. They flew for hours. They saw amazing things, flocks of birds in the sky, islands shaped like animals, stars that winked at them. Tinker Bell flew ahead, her light shining like a guide. But she was not happy. She still didn't like Wendy. After a while, the children grew tired. Wendy's arms felt heavy. Michael began to yawn. Are we there yet? He asked. Almost, said Peter. Look, there it is. In the distance, they saw it, Neverland. It looked like a map from a storybook. There were forests and rivers, mountains and beaches. And smoke rising from pirate ships. That's Neverland, Peter said. Our new home. As they flew closer, danger was already watching them. Captain Hook stood on the deck of his ship, looking through a telescope. He saw Peter and the children in the sky. Pan, he growled. And he brings more children. We'll make them walk the plank. Hook turned to his crew. Load the cannon. The pirates scrambled. They aimed the big cannon at the sky. Fire. Boom. The cannon exploded. Smoke filled the air. The children screamed and scattered. Tinker Bell flew down in a hurry. Peter called out, down. Everyone, down to the trees. They dodged the next cannonball and dove into the forest. The wind rushed past their ears. Down below, the lost boys heard the noise. They came running from their underground home. Their names were Toodles, Nibs, Curly, Slightly, and the twins. Peter landed first. I'm back, he shouted. The lost boys cheered. Peter, we have a new mother, Peter told them. Her name is Wendy. The boys clapped and smiled. Wendy landed softly beside them. She smiled shyly. Peter said, she'll tell us stories and take care of us. John and Michael landed next, out of breath but smiling. Let's build her a house, said Peter. Right here, under the trees. The lost boys gathered sticks, leaves, and mushrooms. In no time, they built a small house. It had flowers on the roof and a tiny door. Wendy stepped inside and looked around. "It's lovely," she said. That night, Peter and the lost boys sat in a circle. Wendy told them a bedtime story about a princess, a dragon, and a clever squirrel. The boys listened with wide eyes. When she finished, Peter said, "That was the best story I ever heard." Wendy kissed him on the cheek. "Good night, Peter." Peter smiled, but he didn't know what a kiss was. Still, he liked how it felt. And outside, in the dark forest, Captain Hook was already planning his next attack. Chapter 3, Come Away, Come Away. The house the boys built for Wendy was small but sweet. It had flowers on the roof and soft leaves for a bed. Inside, it was cozy and warm. Wendy liked it very much. Peter stood at the doorway. "Do you like it?" he asked. "Oh yes, Peter," Wendy said. "It's the loveliest little house I've ever seen." Peter looked proud. The lost boys gathered around, waiting for more stories. They were so excited to have a mother. Wendy smiled at them. She felt happy, like this was her new family. Wendy began her role right away. She made sure everyone was clean, their clothes were neat, and that they brushed their teeth, if they remembered how. She told them stories each night. Peter would always sit quietly, pretending not to listen, but he never missed a word. Wendy cooked imaginary meals. She gave them out with a serious face. "Here is your soup, Slightly. Curly, don't forget your vegetables." They all pretended it was real food. They smacked their lips and said, Thank you, Mother." Even Peter joined in when no one was looking. John became the teacher. He made the boys practice sums and spelling. Michael was the baby. He would often fall asleep in the middle of the floor. At first, everything was perfect. The children laughed and played. They flew through trees and floated in the sky. They chased fairies and watched mermaids sing. But danger was always close. Captain Hook was furious. He hated Peter Pan more than anything in the world. Hook was cruel and clever. He wore a big feathered hat and carried a long sword. But his most scary feature was his hook. A long iron hook replaced the hand Peter had cut off. That hand had been thrown to a crocodile. Now the crocodile followed Hook everywhere, hoping for more. Luckily, the crocodile had swallowed a clock. It ticked loudly as it moved. Tick-tock, tick-tock. When Hook heard the ticking, he ran. It was the only thing he feared. One day, Hook stood on the pirate ship, staring at the sky. He said to Smee, his first mate, "I must catch Peter Pan. I must destroy him." Smee scratched his head. "But how, Captain?" Hook thought hard. "If I can capture the girl Wendy, Peter will come to save her." So Hook made a plan. That evening, Peter and the children went to Mermaid Lagoon. The water was clear and green, the rocks smooth and white. Mermaids lay on the rocks, combing their hair with seashells. They splashed and laughed. Wendy watched them from a rock. "They're so beautiful," she said. Peter nodded. "Yes, but don't trust them. They can be mean." Suddenly, Peter's sharp eyes saw something in the distance. "A boat," he cried. "Pirates." Hook and Smee were rowing toward the lagoon. In the boat was a tied-up girl, Tiger Lily, the princess of the island's native tribe. Peter whispered, "They've kidnapped Tiger Lily. We must rescue her." Wendy looked scared, but Peter grinned. "I'll handle it." He flew into the air and changed his voice to sound like Hook. "Put her down," he called out in Hook's voice. "Let her go." Smee was confused. "Did you say let her go, Captain?" Peter shouted again in Hook's voice, "Yes, at once." Smee untied Tiger Lily and pushed her into the water. She swam quickly to shore and disappeared. Hook was furious. "Who gave that order?" Smee looked scared. "You did, Captain. You said to let her go." "I said no such thing," Hook shouted. Then he paused. "Wait, it was Pan." Peter laughed from behind a rock. "Too late, Hook." Hook pulled out his sword. "Come out and fight." Peter drew his dagger. The two of them fought on the rocks. Their blades clashed. Hook was stronger, but Peter was faster. Wendy watched, afraid and amazed. Just as Hook raised his hook, a sound came through the air. Tick-tock. Hook turned pale. The crocodile. He jumped into the boat and rowed away fast, with Smee paddling behind him. Peter laughed and cheered. "We did it. We saved Tiger Lily." Wendy hugged him. "You were wonderful, Peter." Peter blushed. "It was nothing." They flew home under the stars, tired but happy. Back at their underground house, the boys were waiting. When they heard about the rescue, they cheered. Tiger Lily, safe again, promised Peter her tribe would protect him forever. But Peter only cared that Wendy had watched him win. Wendy smiled at him. She was beginning to understand something. Peter would never grow up, and maybe he would never love someone like she hoped. But still, he was brave and fun and wild. That night, after the boys went to bed, Wendy stayed awake. She looked out at the stars and whispered, "Mother, are you thinking of us?" And far away, in London, Mrs. Darling stood at the nursery window, staring out at the same stars. Chapter 4, The Flight. Back in London, the Darling house was quiet. Mr. and Mrs. Darling missed their children deeply. Every night, Mrs. Darling left the nursery window open, just in case they flew back. "She will come," Mr. Darling said sadly. "Wendy always comes back." He still lived in the dog kennel. He had promised to stay there until the children returned. People in the street stopped to look at him. Some laughed, some were kind, but he didn't care. It was his way of showing how sorry he was. In Neverland, the children did not notice time passing. Each day felt like a dream. They had sword fights with pirates, danced with the native tribe, and swam with mermaids. But even magical places have rules. Wendy had a rule: bedtime stories every night. The lost boys loved her stories. She told them about the Darling family and the nursery in London. She spoke of how her mother tucked her in at night and sang soft lullabies. The boys listened quietly. Even Peter seemed still when she spoke of mothers. Wendy said, "Every mother waits for her children to return, even if they fly away." One evening, after a story, Wendy looked around and said gently, "We've been here a long time. Don't you think it's time to go home?" John agreed. "Yes, we should." Michael hugged his teddy. "I miss home." The lost boys looked sad. "But if you leave, who will be our mother?" Wendy gave them a kind smile. "You can come with us. My mother will take care of you too." The boys' faces lit up. "Really? All of us?" "Yes," said Wendy. "But we must go soon." Peter stood alone, watching them. He didn't speak. Wendy turned to him. "Peter, won't you come too?" Peter shook his head. "I don't want to grow up." "You don't have to grow up," Wendy said. "You can just visit." Peter looked at the floor. "I want to stay here." That night, the children packed leaves and berries for the trip. Tinker Bell watched with crossed arms. She was jealous again. She didn't want Wendy to take Peter away. The next morning, they prepared to fly back to London. Wendy held Michael's hand. John helped the lost boys get ready. They stood under the trees, waiting for Peter. But Peter didn't come. Suddenly, there was movement in the shadows. A voice called out, "Hello, little children." It was Hook's voice. Before they could fly, pirates rushed from the trees. They grabbed the children one by one. Wendy cried, "Peter, help!" But Peter wasn't there. He was deep in the forest, thinking about Wendy's offer. He was confused. A part of him wanted to go. Another part wanted to stay forever in Neverland. Suddenly, Tinker Bell appeared. Her light was flashing wildly. "What is it, Tink?" Peter asked. She jingled quickly. "What? Pirates took them." Tinker Bell spun in the air and pointed toward the sea. Peter jumped to his feet. "Then it's war." Chapter 5, The Island Come True. The pirates took the children to their ship, the Jolly Roger. It was an old, black ship with torn sails and a skull flag at the top. The sea around it was dark, and the sky had no stars. Hook stood on the deck with a cruel smile. He looked at Wendy and the boys. "Welcome, little brats," he said. "You are now prisoners of Captain Hook." Wendy stood tall. "Peter Pan will save us." Hook laughed. "Peter Pan? He won't come. He's too late." Smee and the other pirates tied the children with ropes. They placed them near the edge of the ship. Hook said, "I have a question for you. Will you join my pirate crew, or walk the plank?" The boys were quiet. Some looked scared. Michael sniffled. Hook turned to Wendy. "And what about you, girl?" "I'll never be a pirate," she said. Hook frowned. "Very well. You shall all walk the plank." The pirates cheered. They loved to watch people fall into the sea. Hook went to his cabin and opened a small box. Inside was a tiny cake. "This," he said to Smee, "is for Peter Pan." Smee looked puzzled. "A cake? A poison cake?" Hook whispered. "I'll send it to him as a gift. He won't know it's poison." Hook was sure Peter wouldn't come to save them. But he didn't know Peter had already left the forest and was flying fast toward the ship. Tinker Bell flew ahead, lighting the way. Peter's eyes were bright. He held his dagger tight and smiled a brave smile. Back on the ship, the pirates began to prepare the plank. It was a long board over the sea. The children were lined up. Wendy whispered, "Be brave, everyone. Peter will come." Hook shouted, "Step forward, Michael. Time to walk the plank." Michael stepped forward, shaking. But just as he reached the edge, a loud cry rang out, "Peter Pan." Peter flew in fast, kicking pirates aside. Smee dropped his sword and ran. The pirates screamed and scattered. Hook turned and saw Peter. "You!" Peter shouted. "Yes, Hook. I've come for my friends." Hook drew his sword. "Then let us fight, boy." They clashed again, Hook's sword and Peter's dagger. Sparks flew. They moved quickly, back and forth across the deck. The children watched with wide eyes. Wendy untied her hands and helped the others do the same. Peter dodged Hook's attacks. He laughed. "You're slow, old man," Hook growled. "You're cocky, boy." Suddenly, from the water below, came a sound. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Hook froze. The crocodile was near. No, not the crocodile. He turned to run, but Peter jumped in front of him. "This ends now." Hook swung his sword one last time. Peter ducked and pushed him toward the edge of the ship. Hook lost his balance. He teetered on the plank. The crocodile waited below with a wide smile. "Pan!" Hook shouted. And then, he fell. Splash! The sea closed over him. The crocodile followed. The ship grew quiet. Peter turned to the children. "You're safe now." They cheered. "Peter, Peter Pan." Peter smiled. "Let's sail this ship to London." Wendy nodded. "Home." Peter gave the command, and the wind filled the sails. Chapter 6, The Little House. After the fight, the lost boys, John, Michael, and Wendy sailed back to shore with Peter. The pirate ship stayed behind, empty now. The sea was calm again, and the stars returned to the sky. But Wendy was very tired. So much had happened: the flight, the games, the danger, the rescue. Her eyes closed as they walked through the forest. Peter noticed. "She needs rest." He told the boys, "We must build her a house. Right here, right now." The boys got to work quickly. They gathered branches, leaves, and flowers. Slightly made a door from bark. Curly found soft moss for a bed. Toodles made a little chimney. Peter drew the shape in the air with his finger. This will be her perfect house. They worked through the night, and when the sun rose, a small house stood among the trees. It had a tiny roof with pink flowers, a small round window, and a yellow door. When it was ready, Peter gently carried Wendy inside. She was still asleep. He laid her on the moss bed. The boys stood outside quietly. "Will she be our mother again?" one whispered. "She never stopped," said John. Peter sat near the door. "No one is allowed to enter. She must sleep and dream good dreams." The boys built a little fence around the house to keep her safe. They even made a tiny garden of berries and shells. While Wendy slept, the boys played softly nearby. They pretended to be gardeners, guards, and birds. Peter looked at the house and said proudly, "This is the best house in the world." Later, Wendy woke up. She looked around, smiled, and said, "Am I in a little house?" Peter nodded. "We built it for you." She laughed gently. "Then I shall stay a little longer." She came out and hugged them all. From that day on, the little house became the center of their lives. Wendy told more stories than ever. She patched clothes, sang songs, and gave hugs when someone scraped a knee. Peter often sat on the roof, watching the sky. He didn't like sitting still for long, but something about the house made him feel calm. It felt like family, even if he didn't want to admit it. But Peter also grew quiet. Sometimes, he flew far away and didn't come back for hours. No one knew where he went. Wendy noticed. "He's thinking of something," she said. John said, "He doesn't want to grow up. Maybe he's scared we will." Wendy nodded. "He's afraid of change." Still, the little house stood. It became a symbol of something magical, home, even in a place as wild as Neverland. But dreams cannot last forever. And deep in her heart, Wendy began to wonder, when is it time to go home? Chapter 7, The Home Under the Ground. The little house in the forest was only for rest. The real home of the lost boys was underground. It was a secret place, hidden under trees, with an entrance through hollow trunks. Peter led Wendy and her brothers down one day. "This is where we live," he said. They slid through tunnels and dropped into a big warm room. The walls were roots, the floor was soft earth, and small lamps hung from the ceiling. Each boy had a bed, made of mushrooms and leaves. There were shelves of treasures, shiny rocks, lost buttons, old toys, and things the boys had found in the forest. "This is wonderful," Wendy said. "It feels like a cozy cave." Peter showed her the kitchen, which didn't have real food but had pretend plates and pretend bread. The boys loved to imagine meals. Wendy took her job as mother very seriously. She cleaned the room, told stories, and made sure they brushed their teeth, even if the brushes were sticks. Michael followed her everywhere. He loved hearing stories about their parents in London. Tell the one about the window again, he would say. And Wendy would tell it. Every night, Mother opens the nursery window and waits. She believes we will fly back. She never gives up. The boys listened with wide eyes. Even Peter sat close, pretending not to care, but he always asked questions after. What if the window is closed when you go back? He asked once. Wendy looked surprised. Mother would never close it. But what if she forgot you? She would never. Peter said nothing, but his eyes looked far away. He didn't say it, but he had returned once to his own home, long ago. He had flown back to his window, but it was closed. Inside, his parents were talking about another child. They had forgotten me, he once whispered. So I stayed in Neverland. Now, Peter tried not to think about it. But Wendy's stories made the boys remember their lives before. They began to ask questions. What was our dog's name? What did our bed look like? Did we wear shoes? Wendy answered each question with love. Yes, you had a dog named Nana. She was very clever. Your bed was near the window. Yes, you wore shoes, sometimes even clean ones. Peter started to worry. The boys were changing. They missed home. They talked about real food and real hugs. He felt something slipping away. One day, he said, we don't need mothers. We're wild and free. But the boys only smiled. They had grown to love having Wendy with them. Later that night, Peter sat alone in the upper tunnel. Tinker Bell fluttered nearby. She had grown quiet too. She was worried Peter would be left alone again. Wendy came to Peter gently. Would you be very sad if we left? Peter didn't answer. He kicked a stone. We're not leaving right away, she said. But, I think it's getting close. Peter finally looked up. Will you forget me? No, Wendy said. Never. He sighed. Then you can go. I won't stop you. Wendy kissed his cheek. Peter touched the spot in surprise, as if he felt something strange but nice. The next morning, Wendy gathered the boys. I've decided, she said. We are going back to London. Who wants to come? All the lost boys raised their hands. Wait, said Peter. You can't fly without me. Will you fly with us? Asked John. No, Peter said softly. This is my home. I belong to Neverland. They nodded. It was sad but also understood. Then came trouble. As the children prepared to leave, pirates crept through the woods. They had found the tree entrances to the underground home. Hook had returned, furious and quiet as a shadow. The pirates slipped down silently. They tied up the boys and covered Wendy's mouth. Hook stood over Peter's bed. But Peter wasn't there. He was still in the upper tunnel. Hook hissed, we'll take them to the ship. Pan will follow. And this time, he won't escape. They climbed back up, dragging the children. Peter returned minutes later and found the room empty. He knew what had happened. He looked at the floor and saw a tiny knife, Wendy's. She had dropped it on purpose, like a sign. Peter's face grew firm. He whispered to himself, they took her. And the boys. He turned to Tinker Bell. It's time. Let's save them. Chapter 8, The Mermaid's Lagoon. The Mermaid's Lagoon was one of the most beautiful places in Neverland. The water was clear and green. Rocks shone like silver, and the air smelled like salt and flowers. During the day, mermaids swam lazily, brushing their hair with seashell combs and singing soft songs. Peter often visited the lagoon. Sometimes he played tricks on the mermaids, splashing water or stealing their mirrors. They didn't mind, at least not always. They liked Peter. One warm afternoon, Peter and Wendy came to the lagoon. The tide was low. Big smooth rocks rose from the water, and the mermaids lay on them, sunning themselves. Wendy sat on a rock and looked around. This place is magic, she said. Peter smiled. Watch this. He dove into the water, flipping like a fish. The mermaids giggled and waved. One of them tossed him a pearl. They like you, Wendy said. They should, Peter answered. I'm their favorite. The sun was hot, and Wendy dipped her toes in the water. Michael and John floated nearby, laughing and splashing. Suddenly, the mood changed. The mermaids went quiet. One pointed toward the sea. Peter turned. A boat, he said. Pirates. A small boat came into view. It carried Captain Hook and a few of his men. In the middle of the boat, tied and frightened, was Tiger Lily, the princess of the native tribe. Peter narrowed his eyes. They've captured her again. Wendy gasped. We must help her. Peter's mind worked fast. He whispered, I'll trick them. As the boat neared the lagoon, Hook spoke to his men. We'll leave her on this rock. The tide will rise and drown her. It will be slow. And Peter Pan will be too late. Peter flew above them and called out, using his best Hook voice, cut her free. The pirates looked confused. But, Captain, didn't you say? I said cut her free, you dogs. They obeyed. Tiger Lily slipped into the water and swam to a cave behind the rocks. Hook turned and saw the Raoul Peter in the air. It's Pan. Peter laughed. Too late again, Hook. Hook was furious. He grabbed his sword. This time, boy, you won't win. Peter and Hook fought across the rocks. Swords clashed. Peter jumped and flipped. Hook swam wildly. Wendy and the boys watched from behind a rock. The mermaids hid beneath the waves. Then, the sound came again. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Hook froze. His face turned pale. No, the crocodile. He jumped into the boat, shouted, row, and the pirates paddled away in a panic. Peter flew down, breathing fast but smiling. You saved her, Wendy said. Of course, Peter answered. I always win. Tiger Lily came out of the cave. She nodded at Peter. You are brave, Peter Pan. Peter bowed. You are free. That evening, the tribe honored Peter. They danced and sang by firelight. They called him the Great White Father and promised to protect him always. Wendy sat near the fire, watching. She smiled, but her heart was full of questions. She loved Peter, but she knew he did not understand grown-up feelings. He was still a boy who lived for fun and adventure. After the celebration, Peter walked Wendy home through the forest. You were amazing today, she said. Peter shrugged. It was fun. Do you ever think of the future? She asked. Peter looked puzzled. What's that? Wendy looked up at the stars. It's what comes next. Tomorrow. And after that. Peter frowned. I only think about now. Now is the best. Wendy was quiet. She knew Peter would never grow up, not even a little. They reached the underground house. The boys were already asleep. Wendy kissed Peter on the forehead. Good night. He looked confused. What was that? A kiss, she whispered. Peter touched his forehead and smiled strangely. Wendy lay down and closed her eyes. Peter sat by the door, listening to the forest. In the dark trees, something was moving. Hook was not finished yet. He had a new plan. And this time, he would be more clever, and more cruel. Chapter 9, The Never Bird. After the fight at Mermaid Lagoon, Peter was feeling proud. He had saved Tiger Lily, scared away the pirates, and made the tribe his friend. He flew high over the island, flipping and laughing in the sky. But that night, when he returned to the underground house, Wendy was quiet. She had been thinking more and more about going home. So had her brothers. Peter noticed. You're sad, he said. No, Wendy replied. Just thinking. About what? About my mother. About London. Peter didn't like this. You can stay here forever. Wendy looked at him gently. We can't stay children forever, Peter. He crossed his arms. I can. Peter flew off to be alone. He didn't want to talk about growing up. He landed on a branch and sat, thinking. Below, the lagoon shimmered in the moonlight. Then he saw something strange. A pirate boat was floating slowly toward the lagoon again, but there was no one rowing. Peter flew closer and saw that someone was tied up in the boat. It was Wendy. Hook had returned with a new plan. He had captured Wendy and placed her in the little boat. He pushed it into the water and let it float away. He believed the tide would carry her out to sea, and she would be lost forever. Peter gasped. He dove toward the boat. The waves were rising. The tide was pulling hard. Wendy, he called. She didn't answer. She was weak and cold. Peter landed on the boat and held her. You'll be okay. I'll save you. But the wind was strong, and the boat drifted farther from land. Peter looked around. There was no paddle, no sail, just water everywhere. He tried flying while holding Wendy, but she was too heavy now, too tired. Peter sat down. For the first time, he didn't know what to do. Then came a sound. Quawk, quawk. It was the Never Bird. The Never Bird was a large, funny-looking creature. She lived on the lagoon island. She had a sharp beak and big wings. And she was very smart. She flew over Peter, circling. In her claws, she held something, a nest. The Never Bird had built a nest in a floating hat. She had made it strong and waterproof. Peter stood up and called, "Can I borrow your nest?" The bird didn't answer. But slowly, she lowered the nest toward the boat. Peter understood. He carefully helped Wendy into the floating nest. It was just big enough for her. It rocked gently but stayed above the water. "Thank you," Peter said. The bird nodded and flew beside the nest as if guarding it. Peter flew beside them too, guiding it toward the shore. When they reached the sand, the boys were waiting. They pulled Wendy out gently and carried her home. Peter turned to the bird. "You are a true hero." The Never Bird gave a loud squawk and flew off into the sky. Later, When Wendy woke, she didn't remember the boat. But she did remember Peter's face above her, worried and kind. "You saved me," she whispered. Peter only smiled. Of course. But inside, he felt something different, a strange warmth he didn't understand. The next day, Hook was angry again. His plans had failed. Smee said, "That boy is lucky, Captain." Hook shouted, "No. That bird helped him." "A bird. I hate all birds now." He stomped across the ship, shaking his hook in the air. On the island, Peter told the story of the Never Bird to the lost boys. "She gave her nest to help Wendy," he said. The boys cheered. "She's part of our tribe now," cried Nibs. That night, they made a song about the Never Bird. They sang it around the fire. Peter didn't sing. He just watched Wendy. He was starting to understand something. Something about caring. About what it means when you want someone to stay. But Wendy, she was still thinking about home. Chapter 10, The Happy Home. Wendy's near escape made everyone in the underground home quiet for a while. They still played and laughed, but something had changed. Wendy spent more time sitting by the fire, thinking. Peter tried to pretend everything was the same. He flew loops in the tunnels, told silly jokes, and acted braver than ever. But he knew. He could feel it. Wendy was getting ready to leave. One evening, she stood up after a story and said, "Boys, I think it's time. We must go home." The lost boys gasped. John and Michael looked at each other. "I want to see Mother," said Michael in a small voice. John nodded. "I miss my bed." The lost boys looked at Wendy with wide eyes. "Can we come too?" asked Curly. "Yes," Wendy said. "You can all come. My mother will take care of you." Peter stood very still. "You want to leave Neverland?" Wendy looked at him softly. "Peter, we were never meant to stay forever." Peter turned away. "Then go. I'm not stopping you." That night, he didn't speak to anyone. He sat on a mushroom stool and stared at the wall. Tinker Bell watched him sadly. The next day, Wendy got the boys ready. They put on warm leaves as coats and packed bags of berries. John cleaned his glasses. Michael hugged his teddy bear. Peter still said nothing. Wendy walked over to him. "Peter, please come with us." He shook his head. "I'll never grow up. Not ever." Wendy placed something in his hand. "This is a thimble," she said. "But it's also a kiss." Peter looked at it, confused, but closed his fingers around it. The lost boys stood by the tree roots, ready to climb out of the underground home and fly home. But Hook had not been idle. He had listened. He had discovered the paths through the forest and the tree holes that led into the underground house. And this time, he had a plan better than any before. He waited until night. Then, with his pirates, he crept through the woods. Quietly, one by one, they dropped into the tree holes. Peter was asleep. So were the lost boys. Wendy and her brothers were just about to leave when Hook and his crew burst into the room. The boys were caught by surprise. Wendy screamed. "Silence," shouted Hook. "Hands up, all of you." The pirates tied up the boys and Wendy. They didn't wake Peter. Hook smiled. "I've brought poison," he whispered. He tiptoed to Peter's bedside and poured poison into a small glass of water Peter had left there. Then he turned to his men. "Bring the children to the ship." They climbed back up with the captives, leaving the underground house quiet, except for Peter, still sleeping. But Tinker Bell had seen everything. She flew to Peter's bed as fast as she could. She shook him, pulling at his ear. Peter sat up. "What's wrong?" Tink buzzed around madly. She pointed to the empty beds, the ropes, the spilled glass. "They took them," Peter said. "Hook." Tink nodded wildly. Peter stood up quickly. He reached for his dagger. Then he turned to the water glass. He picked it up. "I'm so thirsty," he said. Tinker Bell darted forward and knocked the glass from his hand. Peter stared at her. "Why?" She pointed to the floor, where the glass had spilled, and the grass beneath it was turning black. "It was poison," Peter said in a whisper. Tinker Bell started to fall. She had drunk some of the poison herself, just to save Peter. "No," Peter cried. "Tink, don't die." Her light began to dim. Peter looked around. He shouted, "If you believe in fairies, clap your hands. Please." He clapped. Hard. Over and over. All across Neverland, little magical things began to stir. Flowers opened. Trees shimmered. Somewhere, perhaps even in London, a child clapped in their sleep. Tinker Bell's light flickered. Peter held his breath. Then, bright. She glowed again, brighter than ever. She flew up and danced in the air. "You're alive," Peter said. "You're really alive." She twirled in a circle. Peter's eyes burned. "Now we have work to do." He raced to the tree exit. The pirates had taken his friends. But Peter Pan would not let them win. Chapter 11, Wendy's Story. On the pirate ship Jolly Roger, the children were prisoners. Hook had them tied to the mast, and the crew danced around, laughing and singing pirate songs. Wendy sat quietly. Her brothers and the lost boys were beside her. She tried to be brave, but her heart ached. Hook stood in front of them. "You have a choice," he said. "Join us, or walk the plank." The boys didn't speak. John held Michael's hand. Toodles trembled. Hook smiled coldly. "Very well, I shall give you time to think." He turned to Wendy. "And you, young lady, any last words before your turn comes?" Wendy stood up straight. "Yes," she said. "I have a story to tell." Hook laughed. "A story? What use is a story here?" But the children leaned in. They wanted to hear her. Even some pirates paused. Wendy's voice was calm and warm. "This is the story of a mother and her children. Every night, she would sit by the fire and wait. She missed them so much. She left the nursery window open, hoping they would fly back." Michael sniffed. "Is that our mother?" Wendy nodded. "Yes." And the children, though they had great adventures, never forgot her. They dreamed of her voice, her hugs, and the songs she sang. The lost boys listened closely. They had never had a mother, but in Wendy's stories, they felt like they did. And one day, Wendy said softly, they flew home, just as she had always hoped. Even the pirates were quiet now. Smee wiped a tear. "That was beautiful, miss." Hook growled. "Enough. You'll walk the plank first." He shouted, "Make ready the plank." The pirates pulled out a long wooden board. They placed it over the edge of the ship. Below, the water was dark and deep. "Who goes first?" Hook asked. None of the boys answered. Wendy stepped forward. "I will." But then, a sound came through the air. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Hook spun around. Pan. From above, Peter flew down in a flash of light and speed. "Did someone forget to invite me?" He landed on the mast, sword in hand. "Attack him!" Hook screamed. The pirates rushed forward, but Peter was too quick. He flew above them, danced between their swords, and knocked them down one by one. The children cheered. "Peter!" Wendy shouted, "Watch out!" Peter spun and clashed swords with Hook. The fight began again. Hook was strong. Peter was fast. They moved across the deck like wind and fire. "Back to your dreams, Pan!" Hook roared. "Back to the sea, Hook!" Peter answered. The children tried to untie themselves while Peter fought. Wendy grabbed a rope and freed John. John freed Michael. The lost boys helped each other. "Grab something to fight with," Wendy cried. Michael picked up a wooden spoon. Slightly took a mop. The children joined the battle. It was wild and noisy. The pirates were surprised. They didn't expect children to be so brave. Peter and Hook fought near the edge. Suddenly, tick-tock, tick-tock, the crocodile. Hook froze. Peter smiled. "He's waiting for you." Hook backed up. "No." He slipped and fell toward the water. Peter caught him by the hook. "Say you're a coward." Hook growled. "Never." Peter let go. Splash. The crocodile dove in after him. The ship was silent. Then, Peter Pan. Hooray! The children danced and laughed. The pirates jumped into the sea and swam away. Peter stood at the top of the mast. "The ship is ours now." Wendy hugged her brothers. The lost boys cheered. Smee, the kindest pirate, stood at the edge. "Can I stay?" he asked shyly. Peter thought, then smiled. "If you behave." Smee saluted. I, sir." That night, under the stars, Peter stood at the wheel. "We'll sail this ship to London," he said. "Time to go home." Wendy looked at him. "Will you come?" Peter looked away. "I don't know." Wendy touched his hand. "You'll always be in our stories." Peter nodded slowly. Above them, the stars sparkled like tiny ships. And below, the wind carried them toward morning. Chapter 12, The Children Are Carried Off. The pirate ship now belonged to Peter Pan and the children. The black sails were still flying, but laughter filled the air instead of pirate songs. Wendy and the boys explored every part of the ship. They found treasure chests full of gold, old maps, and silly pirate hats. Peter stood at the wheel, pretending to be a great sea captain. "To London," he shouted. Wendy smiled. "Home." She looked at the boys. They were excited, but their clothes were torn, their faces dirty, and their eyes tired. They had grown braver and stronger, but also homesick. That night, Wendy tucked each boy into hammocks. She told them one more story before bed. Her voice was soft and clear under the stars. "In a house far away, a mother is waiting," she said. "She watches the window and hopes. She still sings your lullabies." Michael yawned. Do you think she'll be mad at us? No, Wendy whispered. Just happy. Peter flew high above the ship, watching the stars. Tinker Bell stayed near him, glowing quietly. She was still jealous of Wendy, but she knew what was coming. Peter flew back down and sat near Wendy. I've changed my mind, he said. Wendy looked at him. I'll fly you all home, Peter said. But I'm not staying. Wendy nodded. I didn't think you would. Peter looked out over the sea. I don't belong there. I can't live in houses or go to school or be told to brush my hair. I know, Wendy said gently. But we'll remember you. Always. Peter smiled, a little sadly. In the morning, the wind was just right. The children stood at the edge of the deck. Peter sprinkled fairy dust over them. Think happy thoughts, he said. One by one, they rose into the air. Wendy looked back at the ship. Goodbye, Neverland. Peter flew beside them for a while, silent. Then he stopped. This is where I leave you, he said. John turned. Aren't you coming? No, Peter said. My place is here. Michael reached for him. We'll miss you. Peter laughed. I'll miss me too. Wendy flew close to him. Thank you, Peter. He nodded. Tell your mother I say hello. And with that, he flew away, fast as a star, back to the island. The children flew through clouds and starlight. They passed the moon and the rooftops of London. The sky slowly turned pink. When they reached their house, the nursery window was open. Inside, Mrs. Darling sat in a chair by the fire. She had never stopped waiting. She looked up, and gasped. Wendy, John, Michael. The children flew inside and ran into her arms. Mr. Darling ran up the stairs. He was so shocked he forgot he was still in the dog kennel. You came back, he cried. Wendy hugged him. We're home. Later that day, the lost boys came too. At first, Mr. and Mrs. Darling didn't know what to do. But they saw how kind and gentle the boys were. We'll take care of them, Mrs. Darling said. They're part of the family now. In the garden, Nana barked happily. Wendy stood at the window that night. She looked up at the stars. Somewhere, far away, Peter Pan was flying. She whispered, come back sometimes. Even if just in dreams. And Peter? He flew over Neverland, chasing shadows, laughing with the wind. He was still the boy who never grew up. And always would be. Chapter 13, When Wendy Grew Up. Years passed. The nursery and the Darling house stayed the same, but the children grew. John and Michael went to school. The lost boys became part of the family and had new names. Nana got older and slept more often by the fire. And Wendy grew up. She stopped flying. She wore her hair up. She began to help her mother with housework and told stories to her little brothers and the lost boys. But she never forgot Peter Pan. Every night, she looked at the window, hoping. Once, she whispered, maybe he'll come. But Peter didn't. He had promised he would come back every spring. The first year, she waited. The second year, she left the window open. But the years kept going, and Peter never came. Wendy thought maybe he had forgotten her. Then one night, many years later, Wendy was in the nursery again. She was no longer a girl. She was now a grown woman, with a daughter of her own. Her name was Jane. Jane had dark eyes and a curious smile. She loved stories, especially stories about Peter Pan. Tell me the one about the crocodile again, Jane would say. Wendy would smile and tell it. Her voice still had magic in it. That night, as Jane slept, Wendy stood at the window and looked at the stars. She still left it open, just in case. And then, she heard a sound, a tapping, a soft voice. Wendy. She turned. It was Peter. Exactly the same. He had not changed at all. His hair was still wild. His eyes still sparkled. He looked surprised. Wendy, he said again. She stepped forward. Peter. I'm grown up. Peter's face fell. You promised you'd come every year, she said. I did, Peter said. But the paths grew twisted. The stars moved. I got lost. There was silence. Then he asked, who is that? He pointed to Jane. My daughter, Wendy said softly. Peter looked confused. You're a mother. Wendy nodded. Peter turned away. Then you can't come with me. No, Wendy whispered. But then Jane sat up. Peter Pan, she said, rubbing her eyes. Peter looked at her. Do you know stories? He asked. I know all of them, Jane said. Peter smiled. Would you like to fly? Jane jumped out of bed. Yes. Yes. He reached into his pocket and sprinkled fairy dust. Think happy thoughts. Jane thought of mermaids and fairy rings and adventures in the sky. She rose into the air and laughed. Wendy watched them fly around the nursery. It was like watching herself long ago. Peter called, "We're off to Neverland." And just like that, they flew out the window. Wendy walked to the sill and looked out. She smiled. Jane would come back. And someday, maybe Jane's daughter would go too. Because Peter Pan would always return, as long as children believed in magic and stories. And somewhere, far above the city, Peter flew across the stars, still the boy who never grew up, forever.